Good day, everyone. All of us have problems. Sometimes we learn to accept them as part of our lives or problems that we can never solve alone. We tend to blame our environment for a problem that we cannot solve, and we call them social problem. But what is social problem really? Can we always assume that our individual problem is a social problem? So today, let us answer this question and try to understand how it exists and how it affects our lives. At the end of this presentation, we hope to understand social problem, the strategies in social problem construction, the natural history or process of social problem construction, and the relationship of social problems to advocacy and social mobilization. As a sample case, let me share the story of Julie Ann Tomas and the community of San Isidro. In this video documentary, Julie tells the story of how she lived her life, experiencing the inconveniences of not having an own toilet. It was a problem for almost all residents of her community. Some of them made efforts to solve it, but too few of them came up with unsanitary latrines for use by many. Then after such a long time, 45 families found themselves working together passionately to find a lasting solution to the problem. Julie tells a story of how it has started. A worker and a few leaders started talking about it in house-to-house and group meetings until the lack of toilets became a common topic of their discussions. Then one day, they have solved it. Sound interesting? Please join me in further understanding social problem. Please feel free to raise questions after viewing this presentation. And should you need more references, I have included some articles accessible online, and they will be shown at the end of this presentation. What is a social problem? Here are some definitions. Glicken defines a social problem as an issue within the society that makes it difficult for people to achieve their full potential. In the article Social Problems, Continuity and Change, social problem is defined as any condition or behavior that has negative consequences for large numbers of people and that it is generally recognized as a condition or behavior that needs to be addressed. Here are some common social problems. The list of social problems can be endless. It grows in time, such as now that we have come to the digital age, we now have faced new social problems. Depending on your situation, you may argue that many of these problems are individual problems. That is a valid argument because for a particular community or group, not all of these are called social problems despite their presence. To distinguish social problem from an individual problem, we look at these characteristics of social problems. Social problems negatively affect large number of people. Social problems cause underdevelopment or prevent people from improving their living condition, and social problems require collective actions to address. The one condition that distinguishes social problems from individual problems is that they require collective actions to address. However, despite presence of many problems requiring collective actions, we see collective actions geared towards finding solutions to be more of rare occurrences rather than common. What could be the reason for this? What makes a social problem different from an individual problem? In their literature on social problem construction, Salmon, Post, and Christensen asked, but what exactly are these problems and why is there so much social consensus about their importance? The article Social Problems, Continuity and Change states that the social constructionist view raises an interesting question. When is a social problem a social problem? According to some sociologists who adopt this view, negative conditions and behaviors are not a social problem unless they are recognized as such by policymakers, large numbers of lay citizens, or other segments of our society. Therefore, prerequisite to the existence of social problem is social recognition to be such. Going back to Julie's story, we can ask, how did the absence of toilets in her community that used to be considered an individual problem for a very long time became a social problem one day? Julie provided answer to this question when she narrated how a worker and a handful of community leaders continuously talk about the problem in a series of house-to-house, then big group meetings. Meaning communication, leadership, strategies, and processes are required to elevate a problem to a social problem with the aim of ultimately resolving it. In other words, social problems are socially constructed. So how is a social problem constructed? According to Salmon, Post, and Christensen, the key term here is a search for the prevailing view of social problems comes from the constructionist perspective, which focuses on the communication activities of claim makers, such as influential individuals or groups that make claims that certain objective conditions constitute problems worthy of social attention and political remedy. According to the article Social Problems, Continuity and Change, a social problem emerges when a social entity begins to call attention to a condition or behavior that it perceives to be undesirable and in need of remedy. Based on that, I suggest that social problem construction is a difficult task requiring some strategies proven from long years of research and actual experiences by development workers, community mobilizers, community communication leaders, institutions, groups, and other claim makers. According to Salmon and Christensen, students of social problem construction have identified the following strategies used by claims makers in public will campaigns to define and frame social problems. The first is typification, which means defining a social problem and offering examples that have potential to influence the public will. From the story of Julie, typification was done by defining the absence of toilet as poor sanitation issue that have causes, effects, and sample cases. A second strategy involves the use of numbers and statistics to demonstrate that a social condition affects many people and hence is worthy of serious political attention. From the story of Julie, the community group conducted social investigations to determine the number of families affected and the manifestations of the problem that they have experienced. A third strategy is social problem construction, is using the typification of a problem to imply an obvious solution. A social problem emerges through a process. This process, which according to the article Social Problems, Continuity and Change, the natural history of a social problem has three stages. The first stage is emergence and claim making. A social problem emerges when a social change group successfully calls attention to a condition or behavior that it considers serious. From the story of Julie, claims making was done through the facilitation of a development worker and through the leadership of a community group in San Isidro when they successfully called the attention of the residents, the local government unit, and resource institutions on the problem of absence of toilets. The second stage is renewed claims making. This stage may involve a fair amount of tension between the social change groups and these targets of their claims. From the story of Julie, renewed claims making was done when the community group mobilized to the local government offices and private resource institutions anew to formally submit their demand for resources to resolve the social problem. The third stage is development of alternative strategies. According to the article Social Problems, Continuity and Change, despite the renewed claims making, social change groups often conclude that the government and established interests are not responding adequately to their claims. Again, from the story of Julie and ST project, they introduced the 50% grant and 50% loan alternative, which attracted resource institutions to provide funding for the final resolution of the social problem of community of San Isidro. That makes social problem construction a very important component of advocacy and social mobilization. The goal of advocacy and social mobilization is always addressed to social problem. In summary, we learned that a social problem is any condition or behavior that has negative consequences for large numbers of people and that is generally recognized as a condition or behavior that needs to be addressed. A social problem is constructed by claims maker, and as such, it requires application of strategies of typification, use of numbers and statistics, and using the typification of a problem to imply an obvious solution. The natural history or process of social problem construction involves three stages. 1. Emergence and claims making. 2. Renewed claims making. And 3. Development of alternative strategies. Social problem construction is a very important component of advocacy and social mobilization. Public will campaigns begin with a social problem that needs to be addressed. Okay, here is a guide for our reflection. What is the role of communication in social problem construction? Thank you.